You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Welcome. So today's episode is a very exciting episode with none other than one of my best friends, Rikki from Victoria, BC. She is a very successful life coach from the island, and she has created her business on self-aware photographers creating self-aware businesses and moving forward in such a way that is more intentional and creating more success in their businesses and everything like that. So this was a groundbreaking episode because she has so many golden nuggets of knowledge that we discussed and share about. And, it was difficult to pick which transformation to talk about because, when you get to, the pinnacle of success, as they say, you have to go through many transformations in order to get there. And, we decided to discuss today on a future focused, when did the transformation truly begin for her? And that was when she decided to kind of just get out of her own way and make the decision and the transformation to go forward. So anyway, you will see that this is just one of those episodes that you want to pay every minute attention to. And I myself I'm going to be playing it a couple times because it is, you'll see. Anyway, without further ado, let's get chatting. Continue. Okay. So what has been one of the most inspirational things, biggest transitions that you have made that has brought you to where you are today?
Well, I basically spent, I basically spent from the time I was let's say 18, that's when you and I met after high school, starting and stopping things and not following through on things and feeling like I want to change direction a lot, moving around a lot. And then when I would start something, I would be super into it for a short period of time. And then I would start flaking on it, or I would just stop showing up, or I'd go through depression and anxiety, and that would throw me for a loop, and I wouldn't want to do the thing that I said I wanted to do. And then last year, it was in July or August of last year, I was 2020. I was talking to Jeff, and I was talking to him about my photo business. And I was like, I have gone through so many different ups and downs with my photo business, trying to build it, where I would do that exact same pattern where I'd, get inspired. I would do so much work. I'd be working 12, 14-hour days. I was loving it. And then after a while, something would happen. Someone would say something to me that was negative, or I would get into comparison mode around when I was on social media, and I would lose momentum, or I'd feel so bad about myself that I would just stop whatever I was doing.
Gotcha.
And basically letting the outside world influence how I was feeling. Right. And I said to him, I was like, this is clearly starting to become a pattern. I had tried for 9 or 10 years with some like varying levels of success to build my photo business, right? When I was in Lethbridge, I did that. And then when I relocated to Victoria, that was a whole nother ball game of trying to restart that business where you know nobody. But I was like, I really wanted to make that work. And I said to him, I don't even know how I came across this idea, or had it come to me. But I was like, it has something to do with my subconscious. It has something to do with my identity on a level where I'm not necessarily aware of what's happening, because I keep repeating the same pattern. And at that same time, I had discovered a business podcast. So I am a photographer by trade, but I listen to a lot of different podcasts that don't have anything to do with photography. Like this particular podcast was for digital entrepreneurs. And so, but the thing that I loved about it was that they talked about spirituality. They talked about manifestation and like the law of attraction and different universal laws, because that's not the only one. And I loved that they incorporated this whole idea of like, their tagline on the show is something to the effect of, I will be the first to tell you that you don't need to hustle to, you know, create a successful business or a successful life. Like working hard and pushing and pushing and pushing is actually working against you. And so that's what I loved about that whole, I had never heard that before. All you ever hear in hustle culture is you have to keep working until you're sick and your eyeballs bleed and you should never sleep and like all this crazy stuff, right? That was what initially attracted me to that podcast, right? And at that time, I had shared that podcast with a friend of mine, and I said, you need to listen to this, because her husband was also in the middle of trying to build a business. And she messaged me one day and she's like, you have to listen to this episode. And it was one I had never heard. And this was literally probably like a week or two after I said to Jeff, I need to figure out what's going on subconsciously. And it was Jim Fortin, who you and I are both like have been, you know, learning from. And he teaches on subconscious reprogramming. And so she didn't want to listen to the podcast. She told me this later. She didn't want to listen to the podcast. And one day when she was going on a run, she just got frustrated, scrolled all the way down and just hit a random one, downloaded it and wanted to just like get on her run. So she just put it on. Yeah. And so then she sent it to me and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I started listening to his podcast, and then the rest is kind of history. We ended up a few weeks later getting into his transformational program. And that was a turning point, I would say.
Right. So your transformation is not one of, like, in regards to this transformation, I know you've had many, but it's not one of, you know, I went through this event and then I became transformed. You instead had been working on something for a long time and you were ready for the transformation. So like, so you, with a past in self-awareness and, you know, seeking knowledge and becoming more well as a person and all of those sorts of things, you were still in this hustle culture, is what I'm understanding, you know, and it was draining you of getting close to your purpose. So your transformation is more or less around, you were ready for your purpose to come through. Am I on the right track?
I would say that rings true, especially because at that exact same time, I had the inspiration for a new avenue in the photo business, which was teaching other photographers and building a business doing that instead of doing like taking photos. And it literally happened at the same time. I actually, before Jim's program started, I had just been introduced to him and I was listening to some of his podcasts, and that was my first introduction to him. And at that same time, I was laying in bed one night and I had this, like, you know how you get those like intuitions, or those, like, you know, some people call them like downloads into your brain. They just kind of come out of nowhere. I was like laying in bed one night and I was like, oh my gosh, I could help people build photo businesses. This is something that I am passionate about. I went to business school. I went to photo school. Like I've done all this stuff and I've used it to my advantage so that I could actually build a business that was thriving. And I could teach other people how to do that so that they don't get stuck in the loop that I was stuck in for 10 years, trying to figure out how to make it work and what wasn't working. And, you know, and so I had that inspiration. And then it was like the next day or two after that, he was on an Instagram live and he was like, you guys come on live with me. Let's chat. And nobody was doing it. And I randomly caught this guy on
Who's this, Instagram. Jim Fortin?
Yeah. And I went and I was like, hey, let's go live with Jim Fortin. And so I requested to go live with him. And I had only just been introduced to him. And so and because no one else was asking to go live, he brought me on live, right? Because I was the only one in the queue.
Oh my God.
I was scared. I blacked out. Like I would have to go back and like rewatch it. But he asked me like, what do you want to chat about today? And I wanted to chat about, I think it was something to do with like releasing resistance to the abundance that is possible with this new business idea. Because what had happened was the night that idea came to me, I was like, if I build out this amazing program and I even charge like $750 for it, and then I looked up at how many photographers there are in the world. I was like, I started laughing hysterically. I was like, this program can't be worth trillions of dollars. Like that's what it added up to when I did the multiplication, if every single photographer were to like buy the program. Yeah. And so I just kind of started laughing, but then I also realized that as soon as that number came up on the calculator, I immediately resisted it. And so that was what I wanted to talk to him about. And so we started talking, and that was when I got introduced to the be, do, have concept. And for people, I guess, who don't know what that is, basically the idea is that most people are operating on the opposite principle, which is have, do, be. Meaning you think in terms of photographers, I thought I had to have expensive gear so that I could do great photography and be a successful photographer and get a lot of bookings and money and clients and prestige and all of that, right? And the opposite of that is what he teaches, is the be, do, have model, which is if you want to be a successful photographer, and let's put like a monetary number on it just to like really solidify it. If I want to be a $100,000 a year photographer, then I have to start being that photographer now before I get into actually being able to build it. So be the $100,000 photographer now. What would they think like? What would they act like? What would they do in their daily life, in their jobs? How would they prospect? How would they, create an experience? How would they expand their business, maybe through referrals and things like that? So you teach yourself to become that photographer first. And then the idea is that you do the things that the six-figure photographer would do, so that you can have what the six-figure photographer would have. So instead of have, do, be, you be, do, have. You be first. And that was like a huge turning point. And that really, I dove super deep into that between September of last year and January of this year. And that was really that was a major turning point. Like I completely transformed my entire personality and philosophy because of that. So rather than like, that at the beginning I was like talking about how I'd start and stop. And then I'd feel bad about myself every time I would stop, right? That program allowed me to look at things like self-integrity, sticking to your word that you give to yourself and to other people, personal responsibility, like stop playing the victim in your life and take charge of your life.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like, yeah, going back to the word transformation, your transformation happened when you started to embody what it was and who it was that you wanted to be and what you wanted to have. So your transformation was one of decision.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Okay, Christine, this is what I have been thinking about a lot recently. And this is what really, if I can speak boldly, that's something that I'm practicing. Because I was an observer for so long, and I'm quite talkative when it comes to like visiting and stuff like that. But like I, in general, will hold back my opinions on things with people that I am not 100% comfortable with.
Right.
Basically you and Jeff. The rest of the time I'm filtering myself.
Right.
But the decision, the idea, let's go back to the idea, and this might be a little controversial, the idea that things are hard and that change takes time and that things can happen over time. There is truth to all of those things. But there is also truth to just decide. It doesn't need to be complicated. We all overcomplicate things. Just decide that you are now this person. Just decide that you will always be in self-integrity. You will always keep your word to yourself. Right. Just decide to do work in your business every day. Just decide to learn how to think so that your mind isn't the thing in control of how you're feeling and how you're acting every day.
I love it.
It can be as simple as making the decision to be a certain type of person, and it doesn't need to be a progression.
Right. Yes. Yeah. We overcomplicate things. Yeah. And I like how you said it can be a decision to be, specifically be, because that's the be you do have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would agree with you completely. And, I think that if you're habitual in nature to be the victim and you decide that you aren't the victim, then the habit's going to creep up. It's gonna go, hey, you're the victim. Hello. Stop being this non-victim. And I think that you can potentially fall back, but the step after that to continue the transformation that you're going through is to have that compassion for yourself and say, you know what, I'm just going to decide again. Thank you very much for reminding me that I'm human, ego, and for trying to keep me safe. I've decided that I'm not a victim, and moving on. Next step, going back to that compassion piece, which has been really instrumental in my transformation, has been that compassion piece, because I was really good at making lots of decisions, but then falling back just like you, and saying like, I decided I'm going to start this business, followed by, I'm not smart enough. This doesn't work. I quit, and then I quit. And then I started something else, that I think that I would do better at. But, I think that just deciding needs to always be coupled with the compassion to falter and then just be like, I'm just going to make another decision, like, thanks me, moving on, thanks me, moving on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Because like in my life, compassion is a huge thing. Because when's the last time you were able to actually hate yourself into loving yourself? Right. When's the last time you were able to hate yourself enough so that you hating yourself enough caused you to sit down at your computer and do your best work?
Right.
And so, compassion is absolutely essential in that whole process, because at the end of the day, we're human. And at the end of the day, we all have programs that are running behind the scenes that are kind of controlling a lot of our lives and a lot of our patterns and the things that we do every day. And so it even though I just said like it doesn't always have to take time to change, those programs are still going to be there. And so when like those, I call them in our program in Photo CEO, I call them thought habits. So we talk about, we have a whole habit module so that photographers can learn how to build photo CEO habits that will actually empower them to take control of their business and of their mindset, because everything kind of starts with you. And I talk about thought habits. So if it sounds like for both of us, we have a habit of thinking, I'm not good enough once we start something, or thinking there's other people who can do this better than I can do this, and they're already doing it. Or what makes me so good that I can teach other people or coach other people, or, you know, start a business that's successful. I'm not special, right? Those are thought habits. Those things, those are real. Just like getting up and doing the same sequence of events when you wake up in the morning. So like if you get up, you put your feet on the floor. For me, I put my pajamas on because I don't sleep with pajamas on. So I put clothes on. Then I go turn on the coffee pot. Then I go to the washroom. Then I come back, pour my cup of coffee, sit down, drink my cup of coffee, or head out and go for a walk, right? The thought habits are the same thing as our action habits in my mind. And so if you have a script running in your head, and it's a pattern. So like we go through this pattern, getting inspired, doing something new, and then like, you know, a few months later, doubting ourselves and then coming off of that. That's a habit. So that habit needs to be replaced. You can't always just get rid of a habit. The habit tends to need to be replaced to be effective, right? So if you're going to say, let's think about an easy example, like quitting smoking, right? It's not really such an issue anymore, I don't think, for a lot of people, but it's an easy example. If you're going to quit smoking, what do those smokers, the majority of them, what do? They either chew gum, they either start exercising, like they have something that replaces that habit and that urge.
Yes, absolutely. And in my counseling session this morning with my counselor, she said, often when you say no to something, it means you're saying yes to something else. And that was such a cool reframe for me, because if you're a yes man, which previously I've been, the idea of saying no seems like confronting, you know. So like to say, no, I'm not going to do this thought habit anymore, is in actuality saying yes to a new thought habit or a new habit of some kind. So when you can reframe that and say, you know, I'm not saying no, I'm saying yes to me, you know, like that, that can really just launch you into the direction of your dreams.
Can I say too, that's actually a strategic thing that you can do and that I've used for thought habits.
Nice.
When you catch yourself, and it all starts with the awareness of what's happening in your brain, right? Because sometimes you're not actively thinking that you feel crappy about yourself, you just feel it. And you're like, why do I feel bad right now? Why do I feel down? It's not that you were necessarily thinking thoughts to get you there. Like our thoughts and feelings can be interchangeable in terms of how they affect our bodies, right? They feed off of each other. But saying no to yourself. So let's say I'm in a thought loop of, who do you think you are to be doing this thing? When I'm in the middle of that thought, if I can catch it in the middle, I will. But if I'm in the middle of that thought, I'll say, no, Rikki. And then I reframe. So you can use that, and you can say very sternly to yourself, even out loud, no, I will not allow that thought. And then you switch it. You say, everyone started from somewhere, and this is my starting point. Nice. Right?
I like that. Absolutely.
It's a really good tool to use. Yeah, it's a really good tool to use.
Yeah, instead of saying no, you're saying yes to something different.
Yeah.
The flip of the coin.
Yes, that's what I was actually just thinking of, is that's what I was teaching on that in one of our master classes in the spring, teaching people how to use their fear and get out of imposter syndrome. And that was it's great for imagery as well to think about. There's always two sides of the coin. And it also works really well with the law of polarity, which basically states that if the opposite is true, then the other thing has to be true. Or if one thing is true, then the opposite has to be true. So I'm not good enough. Automatically, through the law of polarity, means on the other side of that coin means you are good enough. They're two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to choose which script and which habit you are going to program into your mind when you become aware.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very, very cool. Like you said, imagery to help explain a concept that seems so complicated, but is in fact so simple. And, to go back to kind of the, what has brought you where you are today, what were some of the main kind of steps that you utilized in, finally getting over that 10-year hump of I quit, I'm this, I quit, I'm this, and now you're so committed and you're doing an excellent job and you're thriving. So what were some of the kind of main things that you did during that icky process or that discomfort that would have inevitably come up the moment you decided that you were going to make changes in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first thing is it went back to that decision.
Mm-hmm.
In every possible place, I said to myself, just decide.
Nice.
And then also recognizing that a lot of what was happening in my life and the patterns that I was repeating was because of something happening in my subconscious. So when I joined that TCP program, it's called the Transformational Coaching Program. The thing that helped the most was in that program, we were asked to answer a series of questions in each week. So it was a 14-week program, and each week was specific to something. So habits, self-integrity, personal responsibility, etc. And each set of questions got you thinking differently about what your role is in your life.
Okay.
Learning how to ask great questions to yourself and learning how to be your own coach in a sense is the thing that really solidified everything. So I'm just thinking back.
Yeah, because I'm to give you some imagery, there would have been times where you felt like you were kind of slipping, back into that. I want to quit. This isn't working out. This, maybe I've made the wrong choice, those sorts of things. There would have been things that you did.
On that specifically, because that was a major pattern, right? So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to touch on that. The decision was made. For me, it had to do with self-integrity and personal responsibility, but mostly self-integrity. When I decide that I'm going to do something and there is viability in it, right? So I'm not just I'm not just marching toward a dead end. When I decide to put the wheels in motion for that, there is no door to go back out of. Once you open that door and go through it, now my imagery and my commitment is to close the door behind me, and the door disappears.
Cool.
And from there, depending on what decisions need to be made in the photo business, I pivot as necessary. But there is no question, I do not allow myself thinking about thought habits and going down those paths in your mind. I do not allow myself to go down the path of I want to quit. That is not a door that ever gets open. It's not even there. There is no question on my commitment at all, which means every decision that I make every day in my business is, if I want to have a 7-figure business, no, let me rephrase that. I have a 7-figure business. How would I act as a 7-figure business owner? Who would I need to be to make the decisions right now today that a 7-figure business owner would be able to do and be as a leader? And then I go and do that. I've basically, now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it out loud, I do not allow myself to go there in terms of thought habits and thinking I'm not good enough or questioning my commitment on it. That ship has sailed. That is no longer an option. I do not even go there. And it's a rule in my brain. That thought just doesn't pop up. And that was done intentionally
Mm-hmm.
by using that like no tool just for other people. They wanted to do that as well. If you want to try something and you want to commit to something, commit to your commitment, like commit to your like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if
I
you
do.
say you're committed, then commit to your commitment. And then after that, if I want to act, or if I want a 7-figure business and I start to become that person who can attract that thing and then take those actions and do the things that I need to do. Now, every decision that I make in my business is so much easier because I don't have to think about, do I feel like doing this? So this is the second part. I have shortened and shrunk that hesitancy muscle and habit. I think hesitancy is a habit as well, now that I'm saying this out loud, right? So we decide to do something, we start taking action, and then we get into hesitancy. So I don't really feel like preparing for this next podcast, that sort of thing. So that kind of stuff will like pop up in my head still. But what I've done is I've taught myself how to think about it. So when that thought pops up, I use it as a trigger to get to work. When I say to myself, I don't feel like doing this, I immediately put myself into motion to do that thing. Because if I let myself stay in that hesitancy and stay in that like, I don't feel like it, the same thing is going to happen with this business as my photo business. I'm going to start doubting myself. I'm going to start getting into comparison. I'm going to start thinking I'm not worthy or enough. But if I have that thought and then I take action, that thought is immediately gone. It's immediately dissolved. And now I'm in the process of building confidence with myself and with my self-integrity and in my business and in my capability, because I'm taking action every day and doing the exact same things that I'm telling my students to do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It all really comes back to that self-integrity piece, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot. And then I'm also hearing, without you being, intentional about it, that you have a lot of self-compassion, that you just keep like going back to like, you know, oh yeah, I'm feeling this, no problem. Like it's like you say to yourself, like, no problem. And then you just keep moving anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you're not diving. You're not following these emotions down. You're instead just saying like, yeah, it's okay. I'm having this emotion. Moving on.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm having this emotion. Moving on.
Yes, totally. And that's a big part of it. Cause like this is the human condition. We have to experience all different kinds of emotions. And more often than not, we're going to experience a lot of them in one day. Like you're not necessarily going to just be happy for an entire day. You're not going to just like, you can be, I've experienced that. I'm sure you have as well. Or you're just having like a really freaking great day. Right. Or if you're having a really low day, then so with the low days, cause that is part of the ebb and flow. I allow myself to be in that. Right. If I wake up or if something happens and I feel like really down for whatever reason, and I have noticed too, going back to the self-awareness, it really depends on my cycle. So if I'm at a certain point in my cycle, I will have a couple of days where I am very low and I can't do much except for be mindful of taking care of myself. And I tell myself, it's okay to feel sad. I say to myself in my mind, you can feel sad. Right. And do you know what happens when you do that? When you allow yourself to feel something that we're told we shouldn't be feeling?
Yes.
It starts to lift. It starts to lighten. Yeah. It's the best trick in the book. If you want to, if I'm legitimately feeling depressed, like I'm talking like the next level low, I say to myself, you can feel depressed. And the same thing happens. It raises me out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to be confused with actioning yourself out of those really low moments. Like, cause you say, you know, that you utilize your your discomfort for being like, okay, that's fine, and then you move on and you do the next thing. There's also times where you're very intentional about being like, you know what, I'm really not okay. Like, I'm not just having a low moment, I'm having a low day. And then the low moments, you can hear it and then be like, I'm not following you, and you can move on. And whereas the low days, it's a day, not just a moment, you're able to say, you know what, I'm not following you, but I am self-caring right now. Like, I am like putting me first. Is that what I'm saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
I love that.
That's one of the other major things that we talk about in our program for our students is this concept is really powerful, and it speaks to exactly that. When I'm having those low days, and when you have those low days, like everybody does, and especially if you can figure out the pattern of when they happen, it's really helpful. Like for me, it's like a couple days before my menstrual cycle.
Very cool. Yeah.
I know to expect it. And I also, and I, if it doesn't show up, then great. I'm not going to put myself in the position of having to feel it every time. But everything happens in a cycle. Everything is cyclical. And so that means you can allow yourself to have those days and use it as a business strategy. So in Photo CEO, we tell our students in the self-care module, rest is a business strategy.
I love that.
And rest means when you are having those particular days and you're taking care of yourself, because like this is the other thing is they don't have it happen as often for me. They only happen a couple times a month now. And it's because I have massively shifted my lifestyle to maintain consistency in my business. So I'm walking every day, I'm exercising, I'm eating well. I'm one thing I could kick up a notch is meditating, but I'm very mindful. When I have those low days, I use that as an opportunity to rest because that's what the cycle is telling me to do. And then I come back with so much energy because I have allowed myself to rest mentally and physically and move slowly so that I can move fast again. Right. If you think about like a car, right? Let's say your body is a vehicle, which it really is in this life. And you decide that you make the choice to inhabit that car. And from the moment you get in there or the moment that you become an adult, you just have your foot on the gas to the floor, revving it like, and blowing through all the stop signs and stoplights and just going. Right? Yeah. Let's say there's no other cars on the road and you just go full speed. Eventually that vehicle is going to quit on you, and it's going to quit on you a lot more quickly than if you were to stop and do oil changes or get fuel or, you know, any other thing that needs maintenance in a vehicle.
I agree.
And a lot of people are in this hustle culture of like, and you're shamed if you're not revving at 7 RPMs, 8 RPMs all the time. There's this, I think, underlying current of shame.
Yes.
If you need rest, you are lesser than, you aren't working hard enough, you don't deserve your dream. That whole thing it needs to be tossed out.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Rest is a business strategy. That phrase alone will change your freaking life.
No kidding. And like, and I mean, rest is a life strategy, like that life is a mother strategy. Life is a, worker's strategy. Rest is, it's everything. Name it. If you want to be better at ABC, you rest, you learn how to rest.
So then like the one thing I would say too is, because I've been on this other side of the coin analogy again, where when I was when I wasn't taking care of myself, when I thought I had to be working my business 12 hours every day, sitting at my computer and ordering takeout because I didn't have time to cook and I didn't have time to exercise and I just need to be building my business.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. When I was doing that, I also was going through a lot of mental health stuff. That was when my depression was more. That was when my anxiety was more. And I think I would like push. And then I would go through a huge slump where I wouldn't be able to get off the couch for weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's not what I'm talking about. That rest where you have like that amount of mental health things that you need to be mindful of. I'm not talking about rest in terms of, go sit on the couch for 2 weeks.
Right.
I'm talking about, because that's not a good strategy. It's for life or for business. The rest for me is like, what can I do daily to take care of my body and take care of my mind?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then every month for a few days, I take rest fully.
Yeah. And I think the opportune word here is the intentional rest. As soon as you say to yourself, I am having intentional rest, the rest is different. It's so much different than, I'm begged, so I'm going to watch a movie, as opposed to I'm going to take intentional rest and watch a movie. Yeah. Same activity, but one feeds your soul and you only need one movie. And the other one is you come into it with a kind of a victim mentality and be like, oh, I'm so bad. Life's so hard. So I'm going to watch a movie. You know what I mean? And then you don't feel better after the movie because there was no intention behind it.
And you're just numbing. You're not actually like, I love after like a long day's work, or if we go out like on the weekend and we go hiking for a whole day, coming home and watching a movie is like the best feeling, right?
It is.
But then there's like the numbing feeling of like, you're so stressed out, you've been pushing for too long, and now you just need to like numb out, and you're not doing anything that's rejuvenating you. That's I think what you're pointing to, right?
I agree. Yeah. Very well said. So to kind of circle back through, everything that we've been talking about, I kind of wrote down some of the like main things that popped up for me in your transformation, which I would say your transformation is, as I said, one of a readiness to find that inner peace in whatever version that needed to be, like whether that was the business or in your life, in your marriage, in your health, and all of those sorts of things. It was just truly a transformation of, I'm taking control of my own life, and I am becoming an active participant in my own life, and I'm ready for true, real, authentic happiness and all of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went looking for it.
Yeah,
because I could see myself I could see myself repeating patterns that weren't serving me, and that scared me more than the discomfort of changing and challenging myself.
I love it. Yes, and that's exactly what I wrote down. Is step number 1 is not shying away from your discomfort. That was the first thing that you did, is that you took your discomfort and said, okay, so on the other side of this is brilliance. So what am I going to do about it? Then you got really self-aware and really real with yourself about your patterns, and we're just very intentional about them.
I would say even that would be number 1. I think that would be number 1, and then like making the intentional choice to go into discomfort. Yeah. And the self-awareness piece like really runs throughout everything, right? Because it's like it's an ever evolving thing, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. From there, you launched yourself into research and you invested in yourself. So you took a course. So you decided, you know what, why am I doing this the hard way? Screw it. I'm diving in with a bunch of other people who are also ready for transformations. I'm spending the money and I'm investing in myself. And you took a course.
Yeah.
From there, all of this other stuff filtered out. And that was hugely because of being in a group setting of other people that were also wanting to transform. So there was a willingness for change. So you were done being victim. You instead were like, yep, I'm not holding on to this victim mentality anymore. It is no longer serving me, and I'm deciding that it's no longer serving me. So there was a willingness for change there. From there, interestingly, you started following your bliss. So you started following things that made you feel expansive, which I thought was really interesting, because you'd think that in hustle culture that you would have like dove into the tough stuff, but instead, following your willingness for change, you started following things that made you feel good, which I think is super cool.
Which is, I would say the thing that feels the best is self-integrity.
Yes.
Because like for me, you and I have kind of opposite experiences with that. Remember, like we were talking one time about like you had gone through the program with me when I did it the second time. And we were talking about the week on commitment. And you were like, I didn't really get much out of this week. And I was like, that's because you're already a committed person. Whereas for me, it was like, I thought I would get offended if someone didn't tell me I was committed. But when you look at like the facts and the history, the commitment was always lacking.
Right.
And the self-integrity of like finishing the thing I say I'm going to start and do was also lacking. The self-integrity piece is huge. And like,
yes.
And that means like I get to stay in integrity every single day. If I say I'm going to do something that day, I do it. Right. With rare exceptions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's the bliss for me.
I love it. That's great. Okay. So then from there, one of the really big shifting points for you was embodying who you wanted to be. So the be, do, have, like you decided that you were just going to just be this person, this committed person, this person who owns a 7-figure business, that this person who just showed up online, irregardless of the, discomfort or the fear. You just utilized it. That was the next step. You utilized your discomfort every single time that it popped up. You just were like, yep, very good. Thank you very much for the pop up there, discomfort, but I'm good and I'm going to keep moving. Yeah. And then the next one after that was the compassion for the process. That's what I wrote down here. So,
and for being human.
For being human. Yes. So, you had compassion for the fear that showed up when you decided to change your life. You had compassion for the self-doubt that showed up and all of those sorts of things. And not to say that you followed it down the rabbit hole, you instead had compassion for it. Was like, I see you, I don't need you, thank you, and moved on, And
got curious about it as well. So like when I get into those feelings, I'm always curious about what's behind the feeling. Yes. What thoughts have I been thinking? What actions have I been doing or not doing? And then it's a pretty easy question to ask yourself if you are honest.
Yes. And not to be confused with meaning making. So like saying like, oh, I feel fearful and uncomfortable about showing up online because it's not aligned with my purpose. And what this truly is a sign from the universe telling me that I shouldn't be this entrepreneur. That is not what you did. Instead, you got curious about it and said, what could I utilize in this to continue to move forward in my conviction? So I think that, and I didn't write that down, but I think that's something that we as a society need to quit doing is meaning making. And I think that it came with this spiritual kind of revolution, this paradigm shift that we're having, which is great, but it's creating too much question around, oh, that guy has a green shirt. That means that my heart chakra is out of balance. You know what I mean? It's like, nah, man, you just wore a green shirt. You know what I mean? Like, I love synchronicities and I think they're really important, but guiding your life based on, you know, your meaning making is a sure fast way for you to quit whatever it is that you're doing, because what's running that meaning making is your subconscious, which is scared. You know,
I think it depends on what you're looking for. Like,
yes.
Let me see if I can figure out a way to say this. In my life and in business, I am always on the lookout for synchronicities, and I'm always on the lookout for different signs. And I have the ones that are relevant for me, that I am on the right path, or maybe there's something I need to explore, or there's a message that I'm getting from whatever is beyond what we are. And I think that if you're coming from that place of like looking for ways of it supporting you, that's one thing. And if you're looking for ways where something's telling you not to do something, you can get into some trouble if you haven't done the work on your subconscious to understand what's actually happening behind the scenes. So one example too of like going back to the social media thing, right? Of like, I don't want to post, this isn't going to work for my business and all of that, right? I get into that frequently. I, to be honest, I don't want to be on social media. And part of the reason is, but I am on there, and I'll continue to be on there. But one of the reasons that I don't want to be on there and that I can easily look for signs about why I shouldn't be on there is because one of my deepest rooted subconscious habits and fears is, and I think this would honestly go across the board for everybody, is the need to be liked, being at the very root of that, of like putting up that defense before people can get to you, right? Like if I don't post anything, then nobody can dislike me, right? But as soon as I post something that is real and from the heart, I am really opening myself up for criticism and for people to hate me potentially. They're either gonna, if you're doing it, I'm not going to say if you're doing it right, but if you're doing a good job of showing up as and being who you are authentically, you are going to polarize people just by that very nature of being different than they are and sharing an opinion that is different than theirs. And so you have to kind of be, that's something that I've been exploring a lot is, if I'm showing up online, I can't be pandering to the entire mass of people.
Right.
And that's very difficult to do because at the core, one of my subconscious habits is the need to be liked and accepted.
Yes. I think that's everybody's core.
I think it is as well. I think it is. I think it's evolutionarily relevant, because if you weren't accepted by the group of people that you were surrounded by, you were dead. Literally. Yeah. And so, I think it's in all of us for sure. It's one of those like deep rooted things. Absolutely.
And, circling back to the meaning making and those sorts of things. I think that meaning making has caused a lot of problems. It has also created a lot of wonderful structures and bliss in society as well as we've moved through the times. And it's always kind of fueled by this same sort of paradigm of, wanting to be liked, wanting to be happy, wanting to be all of these sorts of things. And
wanting to be safe,
which is another huge core identity of all humans, right? You're creating your meaning making to try to make you feel safer. Show me a sign. Like, how common is that said? And so my belief around it is, if you have a very stark synchronicity, like, I don't know how to, how do you explain that away? You know what I mean? Like when I rolled 11,000 kilometers, 111, at when I had 333 kilometers left in my tank all at once kind of thing. That was like, okay, I see the sign. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. But I think that it's just being careful to not make everything, because then you're just a little bit too off the ground. And I think that as much as we are spiritual beings and we are, we have higher selves and all of those sorts of things, we are currently in this life on this earth. So for that reason, you still got to keep your feet on the ground. Yeah. And continue, trust yourself. I'm moving back to this a little bit because I'm getting a little off topic here, but trusting yourself to make your decisions over and over and over again, knowing that the universe has your back. You don't need a sign that you're doing the right or the wrong thing, because that's just a label. What it in fact is the world is always for you, not to you. So if you make a quote unquote, wrong path decision, which doesn't exist, but say you do, you will find a way, with the universe's help, supporting you the entire time, to get to where it is that you should have been in the first place. So stopping that fear of can I create this 7-figure business, by instead trusting that you're making the decisions to get to wherever it is that you need to be. Not, maybe your idea of being a 7-figure business entrepreneur for photographers is not actually where you're going to end up at all. It's a path that you took that's going to lead you to where you need to be. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does. I also would add to that, I was in that whole idea of the universe has your back, and I still am, but I have been in that for a long time. I've held that belief. And then I heard something recently that I was like, oh shit.
Okay. Yeah.
The universe has your back if you have your back.
I like that. Yeah. 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 If you trust in yourself.
If you trust in yourself, if you take action on your inspired ideas, and build that consistency muscle to keep moving in that direction, and you take care of the vehicle that you're in, that your body, as much as you can, the universe will have your back. You can also trust that you will end up where you want to end up, and you will end up there at the exact right time and not a second before.
Yes. And keep trusting that, and keep taking inspired action. Yeah. Yes.
I think it's an inevitability. I really do. If you're inspired on something and you take action and you become the person that requires, that dream requires, it's an inevitability.
I love that. And that's the steps. What you just said, that is the steps. If you trust that you will get there, what did you say? Trust that you will get there, take inspired action. Oh gosh, now I can't remember.
I think it was, something. People can rewind if they want.
Yeah. But what you just said is the steps. That's the steps to a transformation.
Have the idea, become the person, take the action.
Yep.
And it will happen when it's right. It will, and like I think about
the inevitability piece, huge.
Yeah. So I think about if I were to tomorrow, if I were to build something and sell it tomorrow, if I built a $5 product and I sold it and I made $1 million overnight randomly, I would not, at the state that I am right now, as much work as I've done, I would not be ready for that. I'm in the process of becoming ready for that.
I love that. Yep. And how self-aware are you that you're able to say, I'm not ready for $1 million right now.
Or maybe I can handle $1 million, but what's required of me to run $1 million business that has all of the problems that a 7-figure business has, and anything that comes along with that? Am I capable mentally and emotionally of handling that thing? Am I physically healthy enough to run that level of a business? Yes. In time, because right now I'm becoming.
You're putting your structures in place. You're learning how to make it easy so that when you get to that 7-figure level, that you have a team, that you have help, that you have, know how to process. Yes. Yeah, exactly. If you showed up tomorrow that's a lot of reason why a lot of people win the lottery and then end up more broke than they were before, because they have no processes in order to handle that kind of wealth, nor do they believe that they deserve it. Yeah. There's
this one phrase that I love that kind of applies to that. And so it's relevant in terms of becoming as well. And I think I may have shared it with you quite a while ago. Ed Milet, he is one of the people that I listen to. He has a really good podcast. And he often talks about the idea of a thermostat, your identity being like a thermostat. So if your identity is at if it's set and you're in your subconscious and you're repeating your patterns that, were ingrained in you from an early age, and then reinforced, and that's say that's 70 degrees. He's American, right? So say it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And now you're building something that allows you to get to 120 degrees in terms of success, wealth, status, all that stuff, right? If you haven't upgraded your identity to 120, you will find a way to bring yourself back down to that 70% or 70 degrees. You will cool yourself down just to bring yourself back to what is comfortable for your identity. And you won't even realize that you're doing it, right? So going back to the lottery winner thing, they think, many of them, I think, I've never won the lottery, but I would expect that you get all this cash and now you think, I'm set for life. And so I'm going to be able to buy anything I want. I'm going to go buy this plane. I'm going to go buy houses for everyone. I'm going to get a mansion. And then all of a sudden, you're right back where you started, because you never really left there to begin with in terms of your identity.
That. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Very cool. The wisdom with Rikki.
My mom used to call me Dr. Rikki as a joke when I was young, because I would say stuff, and I was so proud of everything I would say to her. I'm so smart. And she'd be okay, Dr. Rikki, you always have an answer for everything.
Yeah. Well, what you used to call me something. Katut.
Jesus.
Oh yeah. And Katut from Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah.
The old medicine man.
Yeah.
We are each other's Katuts. Okay, let's see here. Let's see the final things that I wrote down. Okay, so yeah, the final thing that you spoke about was knowing that this is a process and having compassion for that, and then taking intentional rest. And those were the last things that I wrote down.
Repeat.
Isn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay, so if this is a tough one, and take a minute if you need it, but what is one piece of advice that you would recommend for somebody out of all of these things wanting to make a change in their life like you have? So become more committed, stop making excuses, start becoming a participant in their life. What's the main thing that you would recommend?
I'd say get curious about yourself and your patterns.
Okay.
Because none of that can start without the self-awareness of how you're self-sabotaging.
Get curious. So specifically the curiosity, not the judgment. That's not what you're saying.
No.
The opposite, in fact. The curiosity to understand why.
Why you do the things you do, why you do the things you say, or why you say the things you say, why you don't do the things that you choose not to do, why you choose to get in your own way, because it is a choice.
Yeah.
Why you choose to let things hold you back.
Yeah.
who are you being? And then who do you want to be?
Followed by the following steps.
And just decide who are you right now? Who do you want to be? And tomorrow, start acting like that person until you believe yourself that you are that person.
Until you believe yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. So for the future business entrepreneurs in photography, where can they find you?
The best place would be go to @photobusinessdesign on Instagram. We also have a podcast called the Photo CEO Podcast on any major platform. And so we just started season 2. We just recorded for season 2 yesterday. It'll be launching September. Let me check my calendar. It'll be launching again on September 7th. That'll be season 2 release. And we initially we were talking a lot about like different business things that we have done that have really worked. Because I have a business partner, Megan, and so we have conversations on there every week, and sometimes we have people come on to talk. But we were originally focusing primarily on business, and then when we did this last round of our Photo CEO Method program, every single person that went through it said the most valuable part was learning how to think, learning the mindset piece, learning how to flip the coin, learning how to be compassionate with themselves, and understanding that, like, we have a phrase, and I can't claim like this phrase for myself. I didn't say it, but the main theme that ran through that was that business is a reflection of you. And your business can only be as good as you're willing to grow and be. And so that's where our podcast is going to be focusing more towards. It's going to be a lot of bold conversation about things like victim mindset, around taking responsibility, personal responsibility, and more focused on mindset before business going forward on the podcast. So I'm really excited for that.
I love it. Very cool. Okay, awesome. I'm going to end this portion of our chat, and then I have a million questions for you afterwards. But thank you so much, Rikki, for being on the podcast with me and sharing all of your golden nuggets. I know that this is going to be a really, really big episode and a turning point for me in my career already. I can just hear it talking with you that this is big. So thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope it made sense.
Sure did. To me anyway. Maybe we're both skittled. Yeah. All right, sounds good. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.